again, YouTube. This is Brian916. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome back to the channel. So behind me here, I got a 2004 Buick LeSabre with a 3.8 in it. As you guys know, these things are notorious for lower intake manifold gasket leaks. This one is no exception. So we're going to tear this thing down and get some gaskets thrown in there, and we'll bring you guys along. Let me take this engine cover off. I can show you guys some of the leakage that's been going on. Luckily, this thing's leaking externally. I know some of these are known to leak internally. This one's leaking externally. You can see this pocket of coolant right here coming from the lower intake, and it reeks of coolant when the car is being driven. It's a pretty strong smell of coolant. So that's that leak there. All this crud that's been accumulating. These lower intake manifolds also leak oil, not just coolant, but they also leak oil. So it looks like this one's been leaking oil, probably coolant as well. But so I'm gonna get all this stuff cleaned off here before I begin the repair. Alright guys, as you can see, I went ahead and cleaned all that crud off. Went ahead and pressure washed it off of the engine block, the cylinder heads, and the transmission. Just went ahead and cleaned all this stuff off for a couple of reasons. So if we start accumulating crud and everything right here again, on the front and the back, got the back side cleaned off as well with the pressure washer, then the customer would know that you know, they have a leak again. So you want to clean all that stuff off so they can start fresh, so to speak. So we got all that stuff cleaned off. Also chose to do it before I tore the engine down, obviously, so I don't get water inside the valley, inside the engine. And while everything was closed, I went ahead and pressure washed that stuff off down there. And also during the repair process, it'll give any sensors that may have got wet and stuff like that a chance to dry. All right, guys, let's tear into it. All right, first thing I'm gonna start with is getting this alternator out. Pretty sure that's gonna get in the way. Alright, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of voiceover right here because as you can tell, the sound's not too great. I turned my fan on because it was about 98 degrees today, and I guess the wind from the fan is blowing directly into the camera, so the camera's canceling it out, and so I'm going to just voice over for a bit. Gotta love the stubbies. Alright, moving right along. I'm working on getting this throttle body off the intake plenum so that I can continue to get on down to that lower intake manifold. So went ahead and got the throttle body out the way, moved the fuel line out of the way, put that bolt up on my magnet tray. So we got another fuel line right here to remove. That's a purge solenoid to move out the way. So we're looking pretty good right here. Just got a couple of bolts in the back here before I can pull the intake manifold up. We'll get this little bracket out of the way here, and then we'll be able to get this intake up here in a second. Oh yeah, that's right. I was getting that hose out of the little factory tie down. Got one last bolt in the back right here, and we should be free. So let's pull this intake up and out. Come around here so I can get a better position. Oh, okay, so we got one more bolt, and that's it. Get the little plenum off. Now we can actually see our lower intake. Okay, so at this point I need to get the intake manifold out, so I opted to remove the coolant temp sensor so that I can drain all the coolant out from this point. I have a catch pan underneath, so I'm going to get all the coolant drained out of the intake and that thermostat housing via the coolant temp sensor. So next I'm going to just take the bleeder screw out so that the coolant will drain out faster, basically. And give that a second to drain. Alright, so we got it all drained out, and now I'm ready to move on. Let's see, what am I doing? So I'm going to snug that back up. I think next I'm going to pull the thermostat, pull the thermostat off, get that off the intake. Those out of the way. So we can start working on these intake bolts. Pull the thermostat out. We're going to replace this thermostat. Might as well, we're already in here. This is the original thermostat on this vehicle. So we'll replace that. So where do we want to go from here? Let's see. Guess we'll get that EGR pipe off the intake so we can get the intake up and out. Alright, so now I just want to get this pipe pulled back, get it actually out of the intake so we can create enough clearance, move these lines back out of the way where I have them. And we can come through, start loosening up our intake manifold bolts. So that's what I'm doing here. Notice too, if you are doing this job, there's a hidden bolt right in there, and there's another hidden bolt right in there. And the other bolts are pretty visible. I believe those are the only bolts that's hidden. So if you're doing this job and the intake won't come up, check those hidden bolts. Okay, so I'm just going to go around now and just verify that I got all the bolts actually broke loose. And then I'll just come around and start actually spinning them all up. Get them all spinned up, ready to come out nice and free. Just checking to see if there's another bolt holding it. Just looking in there, just verifying that I got everything before I slip a pry bar in there. You want to make sure that everything's free. So just taking a moment to just take a look. As you can see, there's one bolt there that I had to loosen up a little more. That free. So I think at this point I pretty much got all the bolts free. I can start picking the bolts out. Just want to pick them all out so they don't fall if you try to lift the intake up and the bolts are still sitting in there. This bracket was in the way, and this bracket here I left on, but I just loosened it, that back one, just so when I pry on it, it'll wiggle. But this one has to come off completely. So we got that out of the way. And at this point, I think the intake is ready to come out. This little resistance right here is, there's actually a coolant elbow or a bypass pipe that's sticking in there. Pull the gaskets out, of course. Get all that stuff out of there so we can start prepping to get the surface cleaned up. But before we prep the surface for a new gasket, we need to stuff these holes, make sure nothing falls down into our coolant passages or our intake ports. Alright guys, I think that's pretty much it, and the sound cuts back on. I'm looking around, I think I'm going to recommend a valve cover replacement, probably on both sides while we're in here. And of course, replace those coolant pipes. Her water pump was replaced by Disassembly not too long ago. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to see that video. But other than that, we'll probably get this throttle body cleaned out. There's a lot of crud in this throttle body. So we'll probably get that throttle body cleaned out for, of course, get the gasket surface all cleaned up. And so I'm going to call a customer and recommend valve cover gasket replacements and see what she wants to do. All right guys, so we got the intake ripped off. I'm going to give a customer a call, recommend these valve cover gaskets. So stay tuned for part 2. This is Brian 916. I'll see you guys on the next one.